Welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of the journey. And as many of you know, the journey is essentially either stories or reflections on ideas, experiences of individuals who have, um, on their journey of life, how they have transformed as a result of either an obstacle or of some type of barrier in their life or some type of crisis or setback that they may have had in their life. Um, it's it's that time of year for individuals that work either work as an educator, work as a football coach or a fall sports coach, or anybody that uh, has had a child that has gone through the educational experience. This time of year, as August is beginning to um, wrap up, school years are about to begin. I had the opportunity just recently to do a talk for some incoming ninth graders into a local high school, and watching these young people come to come into the auditorium for the very first time. Now, maybe they had been there, for an older sibling or some type of presentation or a play or a musical or some type of banquet, but this was the first time that they had walked into this auditorium as a student of that school. That just a few short months ago, they were eighth graders in their middle school, and they were um, kings and queens of the school, or at least felt like they had an upper hand and a familiarity with that school. And now, as incoming freshmen, they are at the other end of that pecking order, that totem pole. Watching them come in, trying to navigate where they were going to sit, trying to follow the instructions that were being spoken to them about how their day was going to go after they picked up their packet based upon their last name. How some sat by themselves, others were in groups, others, because of their nervous energy, they talked or they played with their hair. Others just sat there quietly, um, eyes wide, as the announcements were happening and the presentations were beginning. I think of that time period when, long, long time ago, when I was a freshman and a ninth grader, everything from the stories that were told prior to me coming in, all those scary, fearful stories of what it would be like going up to the high school, whatever weird stories about what would happen in the bathrooms by older guys that were there, or would I be able to navigate myself through the hallways? For me, because of sports, I think there was a slight advantage by the time we had that first day um, in the auditorium. Because I played football, I had already been on campus and had been practicing with my classmates and with my coaches for sometimes up to 2 weeks prior to that first day of school. And I think that, for me, um, helped with that transition. And I believe that helps with individuals that play in those fall sports, regardless if it's football or volleyball or cross country, or if with soccer is if that's playing in the fall. I know they've changed that season around. But this idea that some type of activity could help you find your space. Maybe it was being part of another type of extracurricular, being part of the band, or some type of activity that allowed you to have the opportunity to practice at this activity, practice your position or your instrument or your craft, so that as you continue to improve, there is an opportunity for you to then fit in or find yourself seeing if you could belong to a larger group, which makes me think about this idea of fitting in versus belonging. I think without a doubt that fitting in is easier. Fitting in to a group, fitting into a team, fitting into uh, with this group of people, either at the either in the classroom or in the hallways or in the locker room, wherever it might. This idea of fitting in um, is probably a little bit easier because it's about assessing what is this group's norms based upon what they wear, how they act, how they behave with each other, and then mimic that. Mirror back to them what the group is doing, and you are more likely than appearing to be socially compatible with that group. And then most likely you will then be accepted or at least brought into that group. I think the risk of it is that you may very well have to find yourself conforming to those group norms. And that if you have something that is different than those group norms, you run a risk of not fitting in with them and not be accepted by them. So, in other words, even though it may appear to be easier, it is runs a risk with the cost of it being conditional. That that being compatible to the group norms and conforming to those group norms is the price that you have to pay to be part of that group. If not, you may no longer be part of that group. So what is belonging? I think belonging maybe initially starts with you. Starts with this idea that you, through your actions, through what you are doing, what you're interested in, what you're pursuing, maybe even discovering what you're passionate about, that you are discovering who your true essence or true self is. That that as you're being and developing your true sense, then there's this feeling of security and support and acceptive and a sense of acceptance within this particular group, that it has less to do with you fitting in with a certain types of group norms, that as you come in as your individual, that then plays a part of the group. That you're able to bring your authentic self by you working at giving your 100% and developing you by practicing, by continue growing and developing and learning, then you can bring your authentic self as you're discovering that. I think of myself when I was playing football or when I was bodybuilding, is that I probably was accepted by this group norm and felt like there was a sense of belonging because they saw not necessarily just my ability, but they saw the amount of effort that I put into it, the work that I put into it, the willingness to help someone else out, as well as the willingness to ask for help. I think being able to show that allowed me to feel like I was being accepted into this, not for what I could do, but it was who I was being. It's this idea that when we're being our true, authentic self, even though if we don't know exactly what that is, but we're developing it and growing into it, I think that are that circle of people that will then see that light that's within us and then be able to have a space for us and hold that space for us. It's it's less it's less conditional because it's about you following your own path that then aligns with other individuals. And that as long as you're continuing to work at discovering your and developing your true authentic self, um, I think that is where that sense of belonging will then come from, because it will then be mirrored back for other individuals that are doing the same. If you find yourself in a group that it is critical of others, putting others down so that you can then feel more like your group is important, you probably are finding yourselves more trying to fit into that group and be accepted by that group. And obviously, there may be a risk that if you don't meet their criteria, well, the consequences will then be conditional. Where as a person is growing and developing and following their path of their light being able to shine, then others in that circle in the same way will mirror that back to you, and you will have that sense of belonging and that sense of acceptance. I think it's not something that just happens as in ninth grade or that first year into a new work environment, or into a new school, or a new a place of employment, or a new city. I think this vulnerable time period of of am I going to focus on trying to fit in, or am I going to stay focused on my development so I can find where I land that I belong? As always, I appreciate you being here. And if you think that someone may benefit from listening to this idea of fitting in versus belonging, please share. And I look forward to being with you next week.